Hello there. I'm going to be talking to you about some adjustments that you can be making to help students in your mainstream class. A lot of the adjustments that I'm talking about are things that may be helpful for other students as well, so please feel free to use what you like. Also, keep in mind that you are the expert in your student, so some of these might not be appropriate for your students. So if that's the case, please don't follow my advice, okay? Right, so I'm going to first of all say to you that we must remember not to use our words so much. That is the most important thing. I think we depend so much on speaking to our students, but we must remember that students with autism are visual learners. So the most important thing that you can have is little notes that you can use and write, making up lists and thinking visually how you can get the information across without speaking. That's going to have so much more meaning for the students you're working with, even if they're very able. That's one area that I find many teachers get wrong. They think that their students can speak, so they don't need to support visually, or they think that it's an improvement. If they only use words and only speak, then somehow it's better. It's not necessarily better. If you took my glasses off, I can't see. You know, it's the same for our children with autism. They need something to help them to see the language. So try to be visual. A lot of our students are very highly impacted by noise and sensory issues. So that's another thing to keep in mind. If you can in your classroom, to try to keep an area where the student can work in a quieter area, maybe being at the front of the class, close to the teacher. If you need them to concentrate better, this is from our workstations that we use, but you can make this out of cardboard or anything. It's just a little privacy screen, a little screen that you can put on the table so that they can just concentrate on what they need to be doing. Now I'm going to show you some things that I use in the classroom. Hopefully they'll be of some help to you. The first thing I want to go over is something that we talk about in one of the modules, and this is all about structure. It's having just visual things to remind the students, so you're not having to use your words and they're not having to process that language. So even having something like this in your classroom, this is choice board. So, you know, if your student is constantly on the computer all the time, it's actually having the computer, okay, you've used that once, it's finished, now you have to make another choice, you have to play a puzzle or do some drawing. This gets your students to actually do different things, and they can see visually, yes, they have done the computer already. Maybe they're less likely to argue with you then if they have the visual evidence to see what they have done already. Okay. Some of our students really struggle to understand the space around them, so they might not know where they're supposed to work. If you have actually some kind of like a colored mat to show this is where you work on the blue, for example. This is where you're supposed to be doing your writing, and you shouldn't be touching other people's items that are not on the blue. Only the blue area is yours. You can also change this with using tape on the table so that they can see where they're supposed to be working at. Right. This is something that's really helpful for all classrooms, I think, and I've seen this in many schools. It's having a classroom schedule up in the front. Now, this is not only helpful for the child with autism, but many other children also struggle to remember what is happening in the classroom. What I find, though, is often the teacher will put that in the front of the classroom and leave that there. So all throughout the day, the student comes in, and naturally they're looking to the top of the schedule to know what's coming next. And it's always here at the beginning of the day, so that's not a good strategy. The best thing to do is to get the child with autism to actually move throughout the day. Okay, we've done the register, now what is it time for? It's literacy and reading. Okay, so that's done. When that's done, they can check the schedule for the class and say, okay, we finished that. I put those items in the finished pot. What's next? And we can see we have maths next, numeracy, and then it's lunchtime. This is going to help all the students, because then they can come back and see what is next. After lunch, we have register again. So never forget, no matter how many times your student has been in your class, how routine your class is, it's important to have that visual reminder of what is supposed to be happening. You may also need throughout your school what we call a work system. This is just a little hint visually to tell us how to do certain things. So for example, if you have a student that doesn't wash their hands very well, you may need a visual reminder of the steps that they need to do, especially in these important times of washing your hands. So the kinds of things that you need to do: put soap on your hands, wash your hands, rinse your hands, and dry your hands, so they can see all the steps that are needed. If you don't have that, what you find is you're having to tell the student over and over again what they need to do, and that really limits their independence. They're not able to do things for themselves. Right. A few other visual things to keep in mind that might be helpful. A lot of students, I find, have a hard time with timing and pacing themselves. So having something like a timer can be helpful. But what I do find with sand timers is sometimes students will cheat if they're doing something nice, like a choice activity, like doing computers. When their time's almost up and you're not watching, they'll turn it over, and they will have more and more time on the computer. It's much better to have a digital countdown timer. This will have a little alarm, and some people say, well, won't that disrupt my class? Won't the children be disrupted? The children get used to it very often, but it alerts you as a teacher that, okay, oh, that's right, his time on the computer is finished, you need to come away. And they can see the time is going down as well too, so they're not asking you how much time is left. They can actually see, and it's very, very helpful. There may be times in the classroom that you need to give some hints. Maybe you have a very noisy student and you're always telling them, shh, be quiet. If you have a visual on their desk and actually put that down there for them, then you're not having to say that over and over again, right? Some of our students really struggle with choice. We think we're giving them something that's really fun and easy to do, but actually choosing what to do with your free time even can be very difficult for students. So sometimes having the hints there for them is something that's really, really helpful. Little things too, like changing clothes for PE. This is all building independence for the student, and it's keeping you from having to say over and over again what they need to be doing. They should be able to start doing the dressing of their clothing independently if they have a checklist like this. Right. You may have little things like this: how to work with a partner. So if you have group work or partner work in the classroom, it may be a struggle for your student to know that they're supposed to speak with their partner, supposed to share with their partner. So having this on the table can actually help them to know that you need to be doing these steps, right? Remember that some students may react more quickly to something that is more kind of tangible, something they can feel. That's going to register in their brain quicker than, say, maybe a picture object like this, right? Okay, so if you want them to go to the library, if you had a black and white drawing of a library, of a book, that's maybe not going to be as understood as quickly as actually giving them a little tiny representation of that. That might actually get them to go where you want them to go as well too. I found students that are wandering around the classroom. If I give them a car and say, oh, can you put that over by the road there, by the play cars, they will take it there. If it's time to write, if I put a pen in their hand, I find, okay, you have to take that pen to the table now, and they actually then go to where they're supposed to be going, and that can be really, really helpful. I'm going to look through more of my bags of tricks here and see if there's anything helpful. We've talked a lot about scheduling. So I find for a lot of students, even more able students, if they know what they're doing now or first and what's coming up later, that's really, really helpful, and it's very, very motivating for them. So having a now next schedule, even if you're a very able student, even if you've told them what to do, can actually really help them. Right. If you're out and about, you may need something a little more portable. So this is a portable schedule. So if you're moving to different classrooms, this young man, Alan, could actually follow along all day what he needed to be doing very easily, and he had his choice board there as well too. So it made it very easy. You had all the symbols that you needed in one place. As I said, some of these may not be appropriate for your students. That's fine. You pick and choose what would be useful to work with your student. Okay. What I find is a lot of students, if they're struggling, they're afraid to ask for help. They're afraid they'll get into trouble, or they just can't find the words. So having this on the table can sometimes help, where they can just point or have their pencil on certain things. I need time out, or the workstation, or I need to be finished. These are ways of actually getting help without them having to speak, and that can be very, very helpful. Right. The next thing I'm going to show you is kind of a work system. It's a jobs list. So this is a jobs list that is the same for almost every lesson, because in every lesson you want the student to look at other pupils to see what you need to get ready, listen to the teacher, and copy the short date. 4, 5, and 6 are things that might change, so you can write those in and then wipe them off every day and change it. And then put your hand up to show when you are finished. And if there's anything important to remember, you can have it here, or you can put it up on a post-it note. So having something like that every day as a routine could be helpful for some of those students that need lots of explanation and lots of help. The next thing I'm going to show you is something that I find quite useful. A lot of our students get very distracted by reading and seeing lots of text. So sometimes they are very intimidated. They feel very frightened if they see something. For example, there's an assignment with lots of work. That's too much work, right? And so they will be very anxious and very worried. Take a piece of paper and this is what I call a word screen. I just cut out a little tiny hole, maybe a word size of a word or a sentence. So say, okay, I don't want you to look at the whole worksheet. We're just looking at one thing at a time, right? So let's just read that, and that actually helps them to concentrate on small things. They're not looking at all the distractions. Now, you might find that very helpful. You might want to actually laminate that. So I've made some earlier here that are laminated. And that's very helpful if you are going to be reading a book, for example. Right, so some students might get distracted by all the pretty pictures. So actually having that, you're wanting them to look at the words. One fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish. So they're not actually looking at the visual clues, and that can be helpful sometimes. Sometimes you may want to ask questions while they're doing the reading. So you can have that, and you can have little post-it notes where you can jot that right down there and leave that. So, for example, how many sheep were there might be the question, and they will read through the text and see if they can find out how many sheep there were. Right. For some students, I find that they may be writing a little bit too big. They may have some problems with their handwriting. It's not straight, it's not the right way. So again, using the word screen idea can be very helpful, getting rid of all distractions. I've had some students say, I can't write. They see a blank page of paper and they panic and they say, I don't know what to write, I can't get started. So you just get them started with one thing, with their name. So if they can write their name, then that's a good start, okay? And it keeps it all to one small size. It keeps it straight. You can make these smaller if they need to be smaller as well too. Never forget the power of post-it notes. So for example, we have a textbook here and they have an assignment. You may tell the students, okay, look at page, I don't know, page 285. Some of our students, it will take them a long time to find that page. If you already have it bookmarked, that will help them to get where they need to be very quickly. Okay, so I was going over the use of highlighters. Use different colored highlighter pens if you can to show where the answers to questions are. If you can write in the book, that's great, all right? So you can show where in the book they may find the answer. The answer to number 2 is in green, for example. Right. If you can't write in the book, photocopy the book or use post-it notes to give them an idea that the answer to the questions might be in this particular section, right? Right. So, finally, I think I just want to say, remember that we need to be using visual help for our students a lot more. Think about their sensory differences. Very often we forget that. Also remember that they may need assistance in understanding verbal information. Even if they are able to speak, they might not ask for help. So think of ways that they can ask for help discreetly. One of the things that I used to do was to have students have a card maybe on their table. If the card is this way, they're fine. If it's blank, like this, then I know they're in trouble and they need some help. So I'd say, you know, do you need some help? And we go from there. But a lot of my students would never ask for help without that little bit of assistance. I hope you found some of these ideas helpful. Please discuss with your instructors and people around you, your colleagues, about different ideas. It's important to share what you have found to be very helpful when working with students with autism, and I wish you every success.